You opened the press conference with on oil. U.S. crude futures today went below zero, went into negative territory.
Went negative,
Yeah.
like interest rates, they go negative.
Does that make you want to see Saudi Arabia and Russia and OPEC Plus do more
Well,
to
it's for
reduce
short
supply?
term. Much of it has to do with short sellers. Much of it has to do, if you look a month into the future, I think it's at $25 or $28 a barrel. So a lot of people got caught. They got caught, and there are a lot of people that are not too happy because they got caught. So if you take a look at it, you'll see it's more of a financial thing than an oil situation. But because you take, I believe, in a month or so, in other words, go a little bit out, it's at $25 and $28 a barrel. So it's largely a financial squeeze, and they did get squeezed.
So would you like to see, however, Saudi Arabia and other countries make more
Well,
cuts?
we've already done that, where Saudi Arabia is cutting back, Russia's cutting back, Mexico's cutting back, and the OPEC plus, they call it OPEC, plus additional states are cutting back. And, you know, the problem is nobody's driving a car anywhere in the world, essentially, 184 nations. Factories are closed and businesses are closed. And so all of a sudden, we had really a lot of energy to start off with, oil in particular. We had a lot. And then all of a sudden, they lost 40, 50% of their market. So it just stopped. So it's going to be picking up, and the energy business will be strong. But they cut back. It could be 20 million barrels, but it's, let's say, 15. And that was between Russia and Saudi Arabia. But this had to do with the squeeze, and it was a very tough squeeze. A lot of people got.
I don't think they need to do more right now.
Well, they're going to do more by the market, to be honest. Look, same thing over here. If the market is the way it is, people are going to slow it down or they're going to stop. That's going to be automatic, and that's happening. Yeah.
Mr. President, on criminal justice reform and these SBA loans, I got an email earlier this morning from a fella in the Northwest who owns a supply business. And he has a felony on his record, nonviolent felony, in the past 5 years, which under SBA guidelines makes him ineligible for one of these PPP loans. So he has now had to let go 50 employees, many of whom are criminals trying to get back into society. I don't believe there's anything in the CARES Act that would restrict.
If you give me the name of the company and his name, I'll have that checked out, John. I'll do that. It's a friend of yours?
No, not a friend of mine. No, it's just somebody who
Why did
contacted
he
me
call?
out of the blue.
He called you to say he's a criminal, and why did he get a loan? Or
He
what's?
says he wanted to apply for an SBA loan and couldn't, and wondered how that squared
Okay,
with
if you
your.
give me the
your-
name, I'll look into it. I'd like to look into that, okay? Caitlin, go ahead.
If these companies that open and they have employees come back to work and they get sick, will these companies be liable?
Which companies are you talking about? Under
Any
what?
companies that open, manufacturing, any kind of company that opens,
So
employees go back to
we
work,
have-
they get sick, will the
I'll
company
give you
be
an
liable?
answer to that. I'll give you a legal answer to that when we look it up. But we are trying to take liability away from these companies. We just don't want that because we want the companies to open and to open strong. But I'll get you a legal opinion on that. I'll get you, well, that's what I'm saying. I'll get you a legal opinion on
You
that.
guys haven't discussed that yet?
Nobody's discussed it, no, but we will now.
Have any business executives have voiced concern to you about being
Not
liable
one,
potentially?
not one.
They didn't say
Not
that
at
on the
this
call
point,
last week?
but we're going to look because they have talked about general liability. So I'll get you a specific answer from the lawyers, okay? Go ahead, please.
Thanks, Mr. President. I wanted to follow on oil. When you were talking earlier, you were talking about the PPP deal and then mentioned the SPR. In the first stimulus package, even though you had announced
Well,
that
but you know the price of oil right now, don't you?
I do. Do you know the
I
price
do.
of oil?
I actually do.
It's negative
I actually do.
$37.
Of course,
Yeah.
nobody's ever heard of negative oil before, but it's for a short term.
In your opening remarks, you were talking about the PPP deal, and then you mentioned the 75 million barrels of oil that,
Yes.
that you previously had said you wanted to purchase.
Yes.
You weren't able to get funding for that in the first deal. So I'm wondering, are you...
Well, at the price you're talking about, you don't need funding. They pay you, see? You know?
If you can go get it
Because
in
right
the
now,
next
if you can
24
get it,
hours,
that's
yeah.
true, if you can get it.
So my first question is, are you asking for that
Well,
funding
at a
as part of
minimum,
the
we'll let
PPP
people
deal?
store, so we'll store it, we'll use it as storage, and charge for it. But people need storage desperately, and we have massive storage under the petroleum.
So you're not going to make it a requirement of the PPP interim funding deal?
It's
that's
not a
coming
question of
together?
requirement. If we could buy it for nothing, we're going to take everything we can get. The only thing I like better than that is where they pay you to take the oil. But that's a short-term squeeze, you understand that. So I don't think you're going to see that. But no, we'd like to have Congress, this is a great time to buy oil. And we'd like to have Congress approve it so that we could, instead of just storing it for the big, usually the big companies, because I think we have 75 million gallons right now capacity. That's a lot. It's, we've been building it up over a period of time, but that's a lot, 75 million barrels. So we're going to get, either ask for permission to buy it or we'll store it. One way or the other, it will be full. Okay, please.
Mr. President.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
You
yeah.
finish up. We'll go right to you.
Yeah, some senators, including Senator Kramer, have called on you to stop Saudi oil shipments that are on the way right now. Is that, you can do that under Section 232, is that something that you would consider?
Well, we'll look at it. I heard, just as I'm walking into the room, we certainly have plenty of oil. So I'll take a look at that, okay? Yes, please.
Question. First on testing, the second on the SBA loan program. When will you, or will you in fact invoke the DPA to force that company you mentioned to ramp up production of
Well,
medical swabs?
we really don't need it. We use it, we go up, and I've used it a lot. But we use it, and then sometimes all they have to do is see it coming. Do you want to talk about that, Admiral, please?
I think this is, I don't think any of us knew very much about the DPA, but there's sort of a force side of the DPA where you force a company to do something, but there's a second side of it, which is really a hand up. The company we're talking about has done everything to support this effort and have ramped up production. I'm on the phone with them multiple times a day. This is the hand up. This is the government coming in and saying, how can we help you expand your lines? There's no asynchrony here at all. So this is the hand up side of the DPA, which is exactly what these small American heroic companies need. They don't need to be forced. They're all in. Their employees are all in.
So a point of clarity.
And we don't want to embarrass people either. Please, Brett, go ahead.
So today, we were on site, or there were folks on site with that company, finishing out what their capital projections will be in order to be able to ramp up these additional 4 lines that I spoke about. The company will then turn in a white paper to the DoD that will then help move the process forward, but it's actively in process.
And I fully understand that the need is enormous, but on March 21st, the administration promised 27 million tests by the end of March. So far, roughly 4 million people have been tested. So where are the other 23 million or so tests? Did they not materialize? Are they in the pipeline? Help us understand that discrepancy.
So since I was the one who said that, let me explain where we were. So I was getting my information, it was correct information about the actual tests that are in the marketplace. So if you want to use those metrics, there's been over 40 million, quote, in the marketplace. But we have an end-to-end issue that we needed to deal with, and that's what we've been dealing with. The swabs, the transport media. If we don't have people utilizing the machines the way Dr. Birx is talking about, we have some of our main platforms that are only 10% being utilized. You could have a lot of tests in the market, and those are correct numbers. But if the machines aren't utilizing them and they're not organized at that level, then they're not being utilized to its fullest.
So
And that,
you meant if the machines were utilized, that would be the
you
number.
would have a lot of those millions of tests already being done. I think Ambassador Birx has estimated that we have another 1 million tests a week just on one platform that could be done if the machines were utilized more fully.
Question for Admiral Guerrero.
For this?
Admiral Guerrero. You say that there, and the Vice President has said this, Mr. Smith said it, that there will be enough tests in place for phase 1. There are. The question is, what's the standard of testing that you now have the capability for? Is it test people who are only very ill? Is it test people who have the sniffles? Is it test people who come in just because they want to get a test? I mean, what is the standard here for the
It is the
testing?
guidelines, but I tried to be a little specific about this on Friday, and we all tried to. Number one is you need to test everyone who's symptomatic, right? And you need to over-test them because
How symptomatic?
we're talking any symptoms that would be consistent with COVID, right? So, and there's a wide range of symptoms. You want to test them and you want to over-test. And we talked about the approximate metric with Ambassador Birx fully supports, because this is a good metric that you want to get about 1 positive for every 10 tests. Then you know you oversample. Second, and this is a really important part of the strategy, is because so many people are asymptomatic. There's no way that you can test enough people to pull one asymptomatic out of 300 people in the population. So the strategy with Ambassador Birx offered, and I talked to epidemiologists around the country, and they go, wow, I wish I would have thought of that, is to really focus on the vulnerable population where we know that the asymptomatic rate could be much higher than the rest of the population. And we are going to be focused, and this is what my office does, and during normal times, focusing on the underserved populations, particularly in inner cities and urban areas. They have a higher rate because overcrowding, they can't telework, they're subject to a lot of comorbid conditions. Nursing homes, we all know about nursing homes, and there's both symptomatic and asymptomatic spread. And finally, some of our indigenous populations in the Indian Health Service. So this is a very, very important layer that most of the models and people don't talk about, because that's where we're going to pick up the asymptomatic carriage. And when you do that, that's when you focus on track and trace.
So just a quick follow-up on that. If we have enough tests right now for everyone to go into phase 1, why is the governor of Maryland having to get 500,000 tests from South Korea?
I don't know what the governor of Maryland is doing in South Korea, but there is excess capacity every day. If he wanted to send 30 or 40,000 tests to LabCorp and Quest, that could be done. That could be done tomorrow.
Enough that they needed to start to up their testing capacity and make it adequate. So
I
they
think
had to
I
have
think
these
we're seeing
late-night
all
meetings
across the
in
country
South Korea.
that in the states that have been hardest hit, their capacity, not only their capacity, their testing far exceeds South Korea. And they've been able to do that on a relatively straightforward basis. I don't know what the governor of Maryland, we talked to him today, he didn't bring that up today. We were on the governor's call today.
But you haven't spoken to him like personally on this?
Go ahead, Mike.
We spoke to Governor Hogan today. I'll follow up because I heard there was an announcement today about that he had acquired some tests from overseas. Maybe we could put the slide back up that showed the number of facilities just in the state of Maryland. And part of our process, and I don't know when the governor placed the order from South Korea, wouldn't begrudge him or his health officials for ordering tests. But the capacity of all the different